even though it looks like Donald Trump is a king these days, he still has a Congress that he has to work with.
For some things.
For some things. One of those is tax policy and allocations of new spending. And the big thing that Trump ran on is extending his tax cuts for the billionaire and millionaire class, and then also doing tax cuts on Social Security, getting rid of taxes on tips, not taxing overtime, and then not taxing car interest payments.
Yeah, and cutting the corporate tax rate to 15%.
And cutting the corporate tax rate to 15% after he already took it down
to 21.
To 21%. So Donald Trump needs Congress, at least theoretically. Let's pray to God he doesn't become God, Emperor, King, and just does these things on his own, and he still believes in some level of congressional oversight and approval. But anyway, Congress has a razor-thin margin in the House right now. Yes, the Republicans control both chambers. 53 senators, 219 House members are Republican. But that 219-member Republican majority is very important because that means that they only have about a 3-vote margin on any bill that they want to pass. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of the weeds of how congressional math works because it's not as easy to say as 50 plus 1 means you win and your bill gets passed. It's a little more complicated than that. In the Senate, there's a thing called a filibuster. And what that means is you have unlimited debate until 60 senators say we want to stop debate. Now, what that means is Republicans, yes, they have 53 senators. They have the majority, but can they pass any bill they want? No, they cannot, because Democrats can go on and debate forever.
But can't they just pass new rules for the Senate to get around the filibuster?
Yes, they absolutely can. However, John Thune is a staunch establishment Republican, and he is strictly against reforming the filibuster for many reasons. One of them is now you're giving, you might get a nuke, but you're not going to be in the majority forever, and he doesn't want to hand the Democrats a nuke. Joe Biden could have done a lot more things if he didn't have the filibuster in 2022. In 2020. Yes, in 2020. And they don't want to give the next Democrat administration that firepower. So John Thune does not want to get rid of the filibuster right now. So what that means is there are certain ways that that the Congress can get around the filibuster. One of those things is called a budget reconciliation. You're allowed to amend an already approved budget, okay? Amend a budget in order to avoid the filibuster. You only need 50 plus 1 in order to pass a budget reconciliation.
Got it.
So what has to happen first is they need to pass a budget. That has to come first. And
that does need to go through the filibuster.
And that does have to go through, okay? And now, so this is where you are going to have a massive problem because Republicans do not agree on how much the federal government should spend, and they cannot agree on a budget.
Well, why isn't the problem from the get-go just that Democrats are, like, why wouldn't Democrats just filibuster away?
Democrats don't want to not give give a budget at all. That would shut down the government.
Okay.
They don't want to shut down the government.
Got
Democrats have no desire to shut down the government.
But they can at least, like, do they not have
leverage?
Yeah.
Yes, they do have leverage.
Okay.
And Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer will use that leverage in order to get the budget. They will absolutely use that leverage.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that. They're going to try to give protection for DACA recipients in this.
Okay.
They're going to try to protect Medicaid through this.
And I assume it should mean that we couldn't possibly see $1 trillion worth of cuts.
Oh, we absolutely can, because that will happen through the budget reconciliation.
Okay.
So this is what we need to talk about here. This is important. The budget process is saying we're going to spend $7 trillion. But that first budget bill means absolutely nothing, because the Republicans can then pass a budget reconciliation and say the government is only going to spend $6 trillion this year. And they can totally change it, which is fine. That's how it works. That's how the government works. That's fine. That's not a hurt against the Republicans. That's how we operate. But what we need to go into the details here is Republicans are not aligned on how much they want to spend.
So we don't know what would actually come out of that budget reconciliation process.
Exactly. And Mike Johnson is struggling, and he's pulling his hair out because the Freedom Caucus members, some from South Carolina, Chip Roy from Texas, I think Norman is the guy from South Carolina, they want to see $1 trillion in federal cuts. That is very, very, very hard to do. Mike Johnson is saying we can get you $500 billion. And Chip Roy is saying, no, we need $1 trillion. If you want to get $1 trillion in cuts, you have to go after Medicaid. And you have to go after Medicaid hard.
And I also want to be clear, if you get $1 trillion in cuts, you're going to crash the economy.
Crash the economy.
completely crash the economy.
Yeah, I mean, that is a massive amount of liquidity just leaving the economy very, very quickly.
Yep.
Whether it goes to Medicaid spending, you have to think about, what does Medicaid spending go for? It goes to jobs. It goes to rural hospitals.
Yep.
And if you cut that Medicaid spending, rural hospitals will close. And so this is what Republicans want.
And poor people will go without health care. But yes, they're trying to use the poor people with Medicaid as the scapegoat.
Yes, and that's what they're trying to do. They're saying we could cut this amount of money through Medicaid, but now there's already problems in this. Moderate Republicans in the House are saying, okay, fine, we'll get on you with cutting Medicaid, but we don't want to cut Medicaid for people with children. That's already causing problems because Chip Roy wants to cut Medicaid for people with children. And there's a ton of Republicans who want to cut Medicaid for people with children. So there's this huge divide going on. And then in the midst of all of this, where Mike Johnson's trying to scramble everybody together, you have the Senate saying, actually, we're just going to do it instead. You're taking too long. We're going to do it. Lindsey Graham, he's the head of the budget committee in the Senate. He's saying, Mike Johnson, we're going to do it instead. Mike Johnson's saying, oh my God, you're going to make my job so much harder. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, Mike Johnson's like, I'm already dealing with enough. Can you just shut the fuck up?
And so now we get this other problem. Lindsey Graham is designing a whole different type of bill.
Two bills.
He's designing two bills, while Mike Johnson wanted one big, beautiful bill. One big, beautiful bill.
That was good. That was one of your best.
Thank you. Now Lindsey Graham is saying, no, we want two bills. This isn't new for Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's been saying this for a month now. He wanted to meet the press a month ago. He says he wants two bills. He wants the first bill to be heightened defense spending, heightened border security, and then he's like, we'll deal with the tax cuts later. Here's the thing, guys. You only get one budget reconciliation a year, okay? So if he wants to do two budget reconciliations within this calendar year, that means he's actually stealing from the next fiscal year's budget reconciliation.
Interesting.
Meaning that the Republicans can't pass any legislation next year that has to deal with a budget.
Okay.
So this is the math that's going on. He's saying this is what the Democrats did. Democrats did this. Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act all in that first year of the Joe Biden administration, okay? First calendar year, two different fiscal years. But now Mike Johnson is saying, Lindsey Graham, please get the hell out of my way, because now Lindsey Graham is kind of giving the Freedom Caucus guys a way out.
Yeah.
And now Mike Johnson is saying to Lindsey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the House to pass two bills.
Yeah.
We might only be able to pass one bill. We have 3-seat majority, and now you're trying to split up my caucus. I don't think we're going to be able to do this. And this is the entire Trump agenda. Now, Trump is already basically saying he doesn't need Congress, and he's going to delete the Department of Education and delete USAID. Maybe he breaks into the IRS and he gets Elon Musk's gang of 5 kids to run the entire internal revenue system. I don't know. But now Republicans are in a real hell of a mess. Yeah. And I want to put one more thing into perspective here. Lindsey Graham actually put out a budget proposal today. I looked at it. It's just a bunch of blank lines. It's saying the Congress approves blank, 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 blank amount of funding for this. We'll approve blank, 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 blank amount of funding for this. It is a template. They have nothing yet. They have no bones. They barely have a skeleton.
So they have, I assume they have some things, but the point you're making is a ton of it, or
no,
they
I'm
have
saying
nothing.
No,
literally.
there are zero amounts in any line item of the budget right now.
Why did he put that out?
To get the starting point, to start the markup next week. Where now the committees are going to go in and the committees are going to say, okay, this is how much I should spend for this, this is how much I spend for that. But
it seems like an auction.
Point is, there's a skeleton and there's no muscles on it. Put this in perspective, guys. The Democrats, today's what? February 7th? February 6th?
6th.
It's the 6th. By February 8th of Joe Biden's first term, we already had a full American Rescue Plan bill. Already written, already done, already working its way through committees. Right now, we have none of that from the Republican caucus. None of it. Trump's first 100 days is a failure in regards to how politicians and presidents normally operate. He is failing to lead a congressional caucus. He has zero pull in Congress. Yet. It all comes down to when he starts making those phone calls. And when he starts threatening people. Because right now, you're hearing people in the back doors leak through their anonymous sources and their anonymous feed. Some of them are saying that they're scared for their lives to go against Trump.
Holy cow.
Because they're afraid that his supporters will kill them.
Yeah, well, I could totally understand that Trump just isn't super interested in talking to Congress right now because he's interested in just getting his hands all over the executive branch's stuff and levers and pulling them whatever which way he wants, regardless of what Congress said before. And he's like, I'll get to that.
And you know what else happens in Congress? You can lose. You can't lose when you're in the executive because you can kind of do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
You did it. Congress, you can lose. He will never forget John McCain destroying his pull to get rid of Obamacare. That was a defeating loss in Trump's first 100 days. That will go down in infamy as one of the most dramatic moments in the United States Senate. He doesn't want that again. He has no desire to work with Congress in any way whatsoever. He wants to leave it to them. And I think it puts Congress in a very precarious position.
I think you're a little premature on this.
Okay.
I think he'll get there. I think he might be afraid of a loss, but also chomping at the bit to assert his ego and power over all these Congress people.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be hard when guys like Chip Roy and the House Freedom Caucus and Norman go to Trump.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, we ran against limiting the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
And then Trump is like, no, you got to get rid of the debt ceiling.
Yeah, it is. The Freedom Caucus people are interesting because they're the ideologues that like might be okay with going down against Trump.
And that's one of the things is Trump has never had to deal. Trump was a businessman. When there was a deal that he couldn't make, he just wrote a bigger check and he got what he wanted. But what happens when he goes up against people who just think something different than him? What happens then when there's no more levers to pull and the guy just says, I don't agree? That is Trump's entire problem with Congress. That's his whole reason he's a bad president.
Yeah.
And that's why the Republicans are going to have a hell of a time trying to pass any legislation.